What is it that is going to give us belonging? What is it that we truly want? And to have the courage to go pursue that, even if that's a one-woman show with a terrible title, like in activating this courage, we will learn something new. We will learn something new even if we fail, even if there's only 7 people in a show. I did have a sketch comedy show that had 7 people and there was 7 cast members. You know what I mean? Like, it was sad. But there is something that we activate when we express that courage. We will learn something new. It'll give us new information to keep pivoting, to keep inching to what we think will give us our self-actualization, to give us that peace, that give us that fulfillment. It is possible, but it does not happen unless we take an inch, a pivot, a 1-degree turn towards that courage and that trying.
Welcome to The Courage Effect. I'm Suzanne Weller, and this is a show about growth and unleashing what's possible. You will hear inspiring stories about what courage looks like, how we navigate what's getting in our way, and the opportunities that surface when we choose courage over comfort. Let's get started. Welcome. You're in for another gem of a conversation today with my guest, Susan Lieu. Susan is a Vietnamese American author and performer. And a lot of our conversation revolves around her memoir, The Manicurist's Daughter, which is such a fantastic read. I highly recommend it, as it explores her journey of self-discovery, healing of intergenerational trauma, and the complexity of family dynamics, much of which revolves as a result of her mother's death when she was just 11 years old. She died of a botched tummy tuck in California. Susan goes on her search for figuring out what actually happened as she uncovers some family secrets and gets a better idea of what happened. And she goes through this struggle of self-discovery, self-acceptance, and belonging, which she's worked through over the years, not only through this book, but through multiple stage performances. We touch on the importance of storytelling, the challenge of body image, obviously her mother dying of a tummy tuck, but also the thread and the theme of food in our lives and how it impacts us with small statements that are made when we are young that stay with us for life, and really the larger quest for forgiveness, both within family relationships and for ourselves. Susan brings so much to this conversation. You will love her energy. You will love just how she weaves all of these stories and tells the journeys that we wouldn't hear otherwise. She also brings a lot of humor to the table, and I so appreciate that too. Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Courage Effect. This is Suzanne. I am so excited for the show. I have been looking forward to this so much the past couple of weeks, and I was thrilled when Susan said yes to being on the show. So let me tell you about Susan before I introduce her. Susan Lieu is a Vietnamese American author, playwright, and performer who takes audiences on a journey of healing intergenerational trauma, embracing authenticity. Say that again. Embracing authenticity and finding boldness in vulnerability. Her debut memoir, The Manicurist's Daughter, an Apple Book Pick of the Month and 2024 Best Book of Smithsonian, NPR, Elle Magazine. An amazing book. I read this book and I cannot wait to talk to her about it. There's so much going on with Susan. She was voted Seattle Magazine's most influential people. She was on the list for 2024. She has done theatrical solo shows. My first experience with you, Susan, was on the TEDx stage when you did your belly fat, how to make peace with your belly fat. And I am just so incredibly thrilled to have Susan here. So Susan, welcome.
My gosh, thanks for having me.
I want to say, so reading your book was something that was such a truly moving experience on so many levels. And I know that you've been through a lot of journeys with your mom, The Manicurist's Daughter, the larger memoir. Give us a little bit about the book. Obviously we're talking about the theme of courage, but I'd love for you to talk about the book and then maybe transition into the role that courage played with you coming to write it.
Yeah, so I need to tell all your listeners that it was never my goal to talk about my family story. In fact, I'm not even allowed to talk about it within my own family. This is a story of how my mom tragically died from a botched tummy tuck when I was 11 years old. But the real tragedy is that my family has never spoken about her or what happened to this day. And now it's been 3 decades. And for a long time, I was 11 at the time. I was the youngest of 4. I would ask them these questions. Are you okay? Where were you when you found out the news? And they were always like, you're living in the past. What's wrong with you? Move on. We all did. And so to get that message as a kid, and then eventually to believe it, that there was something truly wrong with me for wanting to know about the truth, and to have it silenced and so full of shame for so long. The turning point was getting married, getting pressure to have a baby from my dad and aunts. Your eggs aren't getting any younger. And being confronted with this question, how do I become a mother if I never knew my own? And then plot B is, how do I tell my kid, be what you want in life, if I did it myself? And that's with performance and to be an artist. And so this was all, it propelled me into this big pivot in my life where I went from being a contractor at Microsoft doing cybersecurity to then trying to figure out, what is my family's story? What is my role in that? And how do I manifest this on stage to become who I've always wanted to be? And so the Manicurist daughter takes people on this journey, and it's tragic and it's funny. And it never had to be written if my family could have just answered the question, are you okay?
Wow, that just lands so deeply with me. And one of the things that really struck me about this book is that, exactly as you said, it's really funny. And there's so much conversation about, all the family dynamics, so much going on. And, that your mom starting the businesses, your relationship with so many members of your family living with you and your family at various points. But also what really struck me was as you said, the dissonance in the story with what you knew and what you didn't know, and what you could talk about and what you couldn't talk about. And when you decided to go deeper into the story, because you weren't finding out more, you found out you were actually younger when your mother passed away. Talk about that.
Oh my God. For the longest time, I thought I was 12 when my mom died, and I thought she was in a coma for 2 weeks. That was what I thought for the longest time. And it wasn't until I started doing research about my mom and I contacted the lawyers that we worked with, because when she went under the knife, she didn't know that her plastic surgeon was on probation, had 19 lawsuits against him, and didn't carry medical malpractice insurance, and actively targeted the Vietnamese refugee population in the Bay Area. No, this did not happen in Vietnam. It happened in San Francisco in 1996. She had no knowledge of all of that. And because my family wouldn't talk, eventually I contacted the lawyers. We tried to sue the doctor. We got no money from it. He walked away. He just lost his license for 2 years and then went back to practicing on probation for the rest of his life. So what does that say about the medical board and the patients that they're supposed to protect? Separate story. I did some activism work around there to change the law. But the question here is, what happened? And who remembers it? And when I contacted the lawyers, they were like, oh, we actually have the person who worked on this case, and she's a partner now. She gives me access to these Dropbox files where she said, we could have deleted this after 7 years. It's been 20. Here it is for you. I then go back into these trove of documents, thousands of pages, and I learn more about the doctor and his past. And then I also see the dates and the times. She wasn't in a coma for 2 weeks. It was 5 days. I look at the date. I do the math. I wasn't 12. I was 11. Which then begs the question, what is memory? What is accurate? From whose perspective? And that's what I want to drill into your audiences. That's why I cared so much to know, is because I knew so little at age 11. And the frustration that I felt when I kept asking my siblings, I'm like, my oldest brother was 19 at the time. In fact, he had to translate everything. When my mom was in a coma for 5 days, he was translating from the doctors to my dad about what was going on, and then ultimately made the decision to pull the plug, right? And this was all stuff that I didn't understand or know until I went on this journey. And it was at the last minute before I was putting on my show, the world premiere of 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother, that my brother just tells me 2 months beforehand that he pulled the plug. And it was a secret that he's been holding. And I put it in the show with his permission. And my sister watched the show, leaned over to him at the end of it and said, "Is that really true?" Layers and layers of the secrets that we hold, even though we are all in the same family. So for me to go on a quest to avenge my mother's death, to track down the killer, to bring justice to our family, but really to know her, was this confrontation of being courageous in my own family. Because you do not challenge elders. You do not break the harmony. It is a collective. And here I was with my individual American desires to have closure. And that was not okay. So then to have this realization that the things I knew was true was not true at all. Oh my God, what is truth? And that's what I set out to know.
It's almost like you became the distiller of secrets.
Girl, I was just writing a Substack this morning, and it's called The Secret Strangers Tell Me.
Oh.
Every week, people are telling me secrets. I don't know if it's the whites in my eyes. I don't know why they trust me like this. But there is something about the human spirit's desire to be understood.
Yeah.
And for my family that were Vietnamese boat people that escaped from the war, my dad, who's a widower now with 4 kids, a nail salon that eventually goes to bankruptcy, my aunts being a part of all of that too, growing up in Vietnam in rural the Mekong Delta where they grew up. No one had access to counseling. No one has these tools around I feel statements, right? Like no one knows about nonviolent communication. It's more like, wow, yeah, there was a lot of trauma, so you move on, right? Because that's how they deal. It was a form of protection. But the thing is my Vietnamese sucks. And also, they don't operate in those systems to think in that way. So our ability to even communicate all of this, no one had that capacity, right? Instead, it was just like, Susan, you're stupid, go to your room. That it was their trauma was communicating with my trauma. And all we felt was distance, even though we were, when my mom was alive, we were 13 people in a 4-bedroom house. And then after she the biggest figure in our life just disappears. And then we pretend she was never here. That's more layers and more layers of trauma. So tell me, how do you heal from that?
Yeah. What also really struck me too was the stories about your parents getting out of Vietnam. I mean, the multiple attempts, the bloody feet chapter. Talk a little bit about how you think that. I mean, like it's the just determination, like sheer determination to push through it. And it's almost like, don't talk to me about what I can't do.
Yeah.
And I that was one of the things that really struck me was that just survivor warrior mode. There's definitely a lot of beauty and strength in that, but how does that potentially come back to be something like to jackknife in the end that actually isn't helpful because you're so caught up in the victory that you're not paying attention to what it took to get there sometimes.
Yeah. So a little history of my family. My mom and dad, they grew up in the Sau Trang province in Mekong Delta, and both of them did not finish 9th grade. Dirt poor. The town itself had one road. Okay. And they grew up, my dad and mom were born in the late 50s. So they grew up during the Vietnam War. And after Saigon fell in 1975, actually on my mother's birthday when she was 17, they eventually get married And then people start leaving the village. And sometimes they have disappeared because now they're going to labor re-education camps, or they have left to escape to hopefully get on a boat. And they are part of this exodus called Vietnamese boat people, who are trying to get to Malaysia, to a refugee camp. So my mom saw what was going on. But the thing is, we didn't have any money. So what did she do but create an underground lottery operation where her and then my aunt, who at the time was, I think, around 10, would just like when the communists took over, they had a lottery system. And so my mom took her, and other people played this game where it was called heads and tails. And so they would take the first number and the last numbers, and then those were the winning numbers, and people would just place bets and trade money together and try to hit big. My mom hit big 3 times. If she was a dealer, she was a house. And so if someone else had like a really compelling dream and knew which numbers to bet and felt very like confident about it, she'd be like, okay, she'd bet those numbers with somebody else. She had dreams herself of different animals and symbols that would come to her. And so she wins 3 times, has enough gold ounces to then buy 4 tickets for her, my dad, and my 2 toddler brothers at the time. And my dad's like, are you crazy? Like, you have a 50% chance of survival out there on the water. There's Thai pirates out there that are going to rape and steal and murder you. Are you sure you want to do this? You're going to capsize. You're going to get dehydrated. And then maybe if you make it to the refugee camp, maybe you have a chance to get repatriated somewhere, or not. Sorry, not. Then you have a chance to actually seek asylum in another country, or not. And she was like, it's safer on the water than on land. What kind of future am I going to give my kids if we stay back? And so her and my father tried to attempt 5 times to flee. And each time it was like they got caught by the other communist police, and then they'd have to flee. Or like they would get caught and they'd flee and try to go through the jungle. And that was the craziest story. Oh my God. They get caught. My dad has to run without her because if a man gets caught, he goes to jail. So she has my 2 brothers on both her hips, I think age 2 and 4. And now she's running through the jungle, trying to find a way out. They get dehydrated, so they're trying to lick leaves to survive. She's running on all these thorns, so much so that by the time she is found at my grandma's house, and she sold off her jewelry so that someone could actually shepherd her back, because she's like delirious, dehydrated, doesn't know how to navigate this place. The bottom of her feet is all black with thorns, bloody feet. And on that 6th attempt, they make it on a dinghy boat, they get to a bigger boat, and they make it to a Malaysian refugee camp. Out of her 11 brothers and sisters, she's the only one who tried to escape. And she was sibling number 10 out of 12. So it begs the question, what are you willing to do for freedom, right? Because by the time they make it to America, sure, they're on welfare. They made it to the Bay Area, but like, that was a victory. And she knew that if she gets off welfare, she can sponsor over her parents and her sisters to come. And then eventually build her nail salon empire. And who is fueling it but family? But to do all that to get there, right? And when we arrive to America, my dad is a newspaper boy, and he wakes up at 3 a.m. to deliver newspapers. My mom is sewing buttons on dresses for a few pennies each while I'm like a newborn, right? They didn't know the language here. They didn't know how this place operated, but it was better than what their default world was. But all of this I never knew. And I remember in high school, in the 11th grade, AP History, we're reading about the Vietnam War, and the first thing I read is The Things We Carry. And I'm trying to understand, piece together this place that my parents came from. And I remember I would go home to my dad and ask him about it, and he was so gruff with me. And he'd just be like, there's nothing to talk about. So for me to finally see end to end their journey, all of their attempts, what it was like, it wasn't a thing that my dad would freely give me. It was layered over time with interviews with him, my aunts, when they realized I wouldn't stop anymore. When I said, look, this memoir is coming out and you cannot just edit it. You can't just like edit a printer, right? Like it's going to print out this truth that we're going to deem as truth. So I need you now to tell me what you know. I need you to be more specific here, because this is our family story archived, not just for us, but now for the world. And I need to get this story straight. And that's when they started to give me a little more.
The idea of the archive. I mean, I think that it sounds like that was something that really pulled it through for them as well. And I was so struck by, I mean, your relationship with your dad. I mean, all of that, and the courage of forgiveness as well, because I think a lot of this for you was that you felt like you were in the dark, but then coming to understand that people process these things very differently. And as you said before, with your brother and your larger family, everybody holds their own trauma in their own way. So how does forgiveness play into this for you?
I feel like it's been hard. I didn't know how to forgive until I became a parent myself. Parenting is hard. It's really hard. Now I have a kiddo who's 5. And my life relative to my dad, and he reminds me sometimes, was not that hard compared to his, which we shouldn't trauma compare, but he did. And, you know, as I realize how much effort it is to parent, and also for me, the process is actually reparenting myself in the process. There was this understanding for my father, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, he lost both his parents by the time I think he was 12, orphaned. He never really had parenting examples, and his siblings were not. He had an aunt that was essentially his surrogate mom, right? Which was great, but at the same time, he has experienced so much loss and trauma that how could I expect him to be Full House Danny Tanner dad? You know, where we end every episode with a hug and a nice chorus line. Like, it's not going to happen. But I was scolding my dad against that, right? And that if he didn't do that to me and give me space for my feelings, then it was a personal attack on me. He never had space for his feelings. And if we want to talk about Asian masculinity, definitely don't have space there. So how can I expect a man of a different generation and cultural upbringing to be American? And I never saw that contrast until I had a kid and also did all this research for the book, to then say, wow, I've been pointing my finger at him, blaming him, that if only he could change, then I'd be better. Then I'd have closure. Then I could move on. And it was after I became a parent that I stopped pointing at him and started to point at myself. Because what I had done, Suzanne, is I had frozen him in time. I had frozen him in time to be high school dad, the guy who said no one liked me, everyone's lying to me, I'm a failure, I'm so stupid. I received all that information and didn't allow him to evolve as time went on. That he could be an adult and a human and have different experiences. I gave myself that wonderful privilege, but I never gave it to him. So after I became a mom, I decided it is time for me to point the finger at me and to give him permission to thaw. Let the man be a human. Let him evolve. If I can give it to myself, I need to give it to him. It also came with the understanding that everyone has boundaries. I tell him my boundaries, but he doesn't know how to express direct boundaries. So finally, I got to open my eyes up to indirect boundaries, right? Like, if I bring up, like, tell me about where you were when mom died, and then he abruptly wants to hang up the call, that's an indirect boundary, Susan. But, like, it's like, I was, like, dumb as a doornail. Like, it doesn't matter. I went to Harvard and Yale. Like, I was just kind of, like, so explicit about my communication. I was like, that was weird. You know, like, I think he's mad at me. Not, oh, wow, he doesn't, I'm triggering him right now.
Yeah, he's shutting down.
And he's shutting down. And that's where we're at, right? Like, it took me doing the shows multiple times and embodying him and becoming him as a character, because he would interact with younger Susan, right? And then also doing the research around the book and then figuring out, okay, I need to give some payoff to the reader, right? So I'm going to tell you this story, and we're going to actually land it with my father, because it's with deep understanding with him and his trauma that I can have closure with mine, right? And then I can really paint everything he's told me in tiny bits and pieces here and there, and I can show you his full portrait so that also you understand my full portrait. This whole book is a search to know my mom, but guess what? I cannot know me without knowing him. And I cannot move forward and live my life and not be stuck in the past unless I also forgive him. So becoming a mom was this evolution for me, right? For me to understand his sacrifice as a parent to me, and also his own suffering as a child too.
There's so many layers here. When you talk about your dad, you talk about your mom, you talk about your aunts, your siblings, so many different truths, as you say. I mean, there, the idea of like what is truth and what is not truth, but the stories are so powerful. And as you go through this, you are that, we're talking about sort of like the secrets, like broker or distiller, also the story broker in a lot of ways. And you bring so much of this to your work. I mean, this really is the core of your work, in addition to all of the hilarity that is a part of it too. But what does it take for you to perform all of this, like such personal things in front of an audience, when you're writing it down? I mean, in all of the different mediums? I'm curious.
Yeah, well, Suzanne, what we did not mention is I have no training in any of this.
That's right.
I do not have an MFA. I have an MBA. Foolishness. I got so much debt to only become an artist. Like, tell me. Like, I have revealed to you that I had a low SAT score. I brought down my school average. But like, part of this is the willingness to look at the past, to know that that's going to be my liberation. Part of this is learning a new craft, right? I actually hadn't gone to much theater until I actually did my show. And it was our friend Julie Pham who was like, have you ever thought of theater? Because I was like, I'm a failed stand-up comic. Blah. And then she was like, let's go to theater. So she took me to a show at the Act in the Round Theater. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then I literally was like, okay, I'm going to take a solo performance class. I had no idea what I was doing. And within a period of about 6 months, I take a class. I start my first solo show. It was 25 minutes. And it was the worst title ever. It was Dr. X, How I Avenged My Mother's Death. Like, it's like the most literal dumb title ever. But it was 25 minutes of me just playing around with character work. And I saw Sarah Porkalab on stage with her Dragon Cycle show. And I was like, what is she doing? Because I want to do that. I want the way I feel in her show. I want people to feel that in my show. Let's figure that out. So I bought her a croissant, and I just like asked her for like some gesture work so I could understand how to show the differences of my family members. And within a year and a half, I debut my solo work, 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother. I play 15 characters in 65 minutes. It's sad. It's funny. It's an emotional roller coaster because I need you to have moments of reprieve, exhalation, so that we can keep going deeper, right? And it's also just my style and my personality. But I had to just figure out this craft. Okay, so I do that within a year and a half. And then I go, oh, you know what'd be great? If I take this on a 10-city national tour. But I drag my feet. I drag my feet to book any venues because my ambitious type A overachiever is like, what if I lose money? What if no one comes? What if I'm a failure? And you know what a procrastinator needs? A deadline. And I was pregnant. And so that deadline is called your second trimester. Because that's when you're going to feel the best, right? So then in a span of a year, I perform my show 60 times to 7,000 people, and I sell every single ticket. But what my baby was feeling in utero, I mean, I'm just like, he must think I'm maniacal like crazy because, right, I go from laughing to crying, boom, 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 like so fast. And so people are always like, oh my God, is that so hard? Because like sometimes I do cry on stage. Sometimes I'm so in it, I'm just like letting it go. It gives permission for everyone else to release. And people are like, wow, is that like, are you re-traumatized every night? And I'm like, no. What was traumatizing was the writing process. 140 pounds was the 5th iteration. And every iteration had 5 drafts. And every time I wrote a draft and then my director would be like, all right, let's try it out. Let's in rehearsal. My throat would tense up. One of my directors was like, your characters are kind of flat. Like your family, like they kind of seem like they're just like mean to you and they don't care. And I was like, yeah, they are. And then they were like, Sarah was like, are you sure they weren't sad that your mom died? And I was like, yeah, I guess they're sad, but like they don't ever tell me. And she goes, okay, well, why don't you walk like them? Start talking like them. And the one that broke me was become your mom now. How does she hold herself? How does she talk? Where does it come from in her body? What does she just start becoming your mother? And I'm like, eyes like just sobbing, going like, how do I become her if I don't know her? And she said, allow her to be in you. That was hard. Saying my scripts out loud for the first time. There was this one show, it was the second one, Dr. X, How I Avenged My Mother's Death Part 2. So I remember in the second show during rehearsal, my director Paul was like, all right, now I'm over here and you're in Vietnam and I'm in America and I want you to shout it to me that I have to hear it all the way across an ocean. And I would just like hold my script and I would just be like, because it was just like, that was the cathartic, insane part for me. Like that was a part that was like really moving the blockage, the trauma that has been lodged in different parts of my body, finally giving voice to it, attention, the care that it's been begging for years, and saying that for the first time in a rehearsal room, that was hard. Once I get the script down, okay, it's like 65 minutes, like 10,000 words. It's a lot to rehearse. And I have a very specific schedule every day to rehearse so that I'm ready for the show by nighttime. That's craft. But to get there was to face the past and give my family that humanity that they haven't ever shared with me. That was hard.
And I'm so grateful that you're sharing this with the world. And thank you, Julie, by the way, for actually putting that seed in your head to bring it it out.
It was so embarrassing. I was like, theater? I was like, Julie, I fall asleep in theater. Because I had only gone to see the Nutcracker and Shakespeare growing up. You know, like that's like the field trips you get to go to for school. And then I'd fall asleep in the theater and I'd be embarrassed. I didn't think, oh, my story isn't represented on stage. I don't feel a connection here. Instead, I was just like, this sucks. And so I had never thought I would go into theater. Can you believe it?
Wow.
And then I used that medium, right? But wait, I was like, oh, did I actually answer your question?
You did.
Oh, great.
You did. And you're taking me forward to when you talk about doing the work and it being in your body, right?
Yeah.
Like the body knows the score, like you hold that with your mom and her death being by plastic surgery and the whole idea of idealistic bodies for women and otherwise. How do you balance all of that as a mom, as a woman, as you are physically embodying your work? I mean, embodying, just the word. But I wonder for you, how does that now show up in your body?
My body is much more communicative to me than before. I love cheese. I love milk. Guess what? My body doesn't love it. And for decades, I would just like eat it and be like, this is weird. Like, why is the bathroom so weird experience? Right? It's like for so long, I was detached from my body. For a long time, when I was growing up, I remember when I was 12 years old, a year after my mom died, I'm going for a second bowl of rice, and my dad and aunt stopped me right there, and they're like, whoa, 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 like, if you eat too much, you get fat and then you'll die alone because no one will want to marry you. A year after my mom dies from a tummy tuck, right? And so that kind of language gets really seared into my brain where I'm like, okay, my worthiness is my body. And at the time, I think I was like a size 4, which is like a whale in Vietnamese culture. Because my sister, what was she? But a 00. Why does it count start at 00? Like, why doesn't the count just start at 1? You know, and like, let us all catch up. No, I started at 00. And so my sister was this beauty standard that I could never achieve, you know, and we never talked about like, oh, Wendy grew up in a Malaysian refugee camp and she was probably malnourished, and Susan had access to welfare milk, you know, like we didn't talk about the difference of nutrition and access. Instead, it was this blame. It was this moral thing that I was lazy and I'm unlovable, so that's going to be my life future. Okay, that's the background and underscoring of my body image issues, right? Like it happened very young. And then I also grew up in a nail salon that had every issue of Cosmo, 17, L, just like Allure, you know, everything about sex secrets and like how to please a man and, you know, basically how your body is worth. So then I really rejected beauty. It was really frumpy and tomboyish. And I was like, oh, if you're into that, you're vain. And then as I grew up, I saw women with plastic surgery and I'd be like, you're vain, you're shallow. And then as I dove more into the story of my mom, I'm like, God, I don't think I would be friends with her if I saw her on the street. And then it was after I had a kid. And I don't know about you, but I always want to lose 20 pounds. And I've always wanted to lose it for the last 20 years. And I never bought new clothes because I'd always be like, well, one day I don't want to like lose money and throw away those clothes. So I never had clothes that actually fit me. I had stuff from like a free bin, you know, like child of immigrant mentality meets like this hope that like maybe I will be lovable if I lose the weight. So I've done diets over the years, exercised a lot, but it was with that motivation that maybe I'll be enough. And it was after I had a kid. And actually, I got to tell you, I had a breakthrough in January. I found out that my aunt was dying from lung cancer. And so I flew back to Vietnam to see her in the ICU. And her body couldn't function for her anymore. And her daughter was trying to give her teaspoons of coconut water and blended food. And then she just like 1 or 2 spoonfuls and she couldn't hold it in. And I'm looking at a body that cannot serve anymore. And it's when you're like that close to death that you start to think about your own body, right? Instead of, if only I could lose the 20, it was more like, oh my God, my body can do so much. My body allows me to move in this world and experience the world however I want to, and no one needs to help me go to the bathroom. No one needs to help me go to eat. I am actually in this very healthy vessel that allows me to do so much. It took that contrast for me to see how precious my body is. And it was during that TEDx talk that I talked about how I went to a sweat lodge and there I wanted my ancestors to help me cure me of all of my body image struggle. And instead, my grandmother slapped me around and was like, are you a fool? When you say you hate your body, that means you're saying you hate where you come from. That means you hate us. My body is my mother's last gift to me. I am so many generations in this body, and I was able to deliver life from this body, and I hate it. I think it reduces who I am. It makes me so unworthy. After that sweat lodge, that also changed me too, right? Where I could really see that this was about my ancestors and my mom, and that I'm in communion with my mom through my body. And so it's these instances where it helps me wake up. Yeah. I mean, I hate that it has to be so extreme, but on social media, I'm looking at the Kardashians And I can't stop looking at them. Like, I know they're plastic, but I can't stop looking at them because I think, what's wrong with me? So it's been a struggle, And I'm happy to report that when I work out, it's not because I actually think I'll lose the 20. It's more about, I know I'm most stable and my best self, and I'm able to be that beacon of love and light to other people in the community and to myself and to my family if I do work out. And that's my gift. Like, I am prioritizing me when I work out. Like, I still grunt a lot when I work out. Like, I'm like trying so hard to do burpees. Sometimes I just like roll over like a beach whale being like, I can't anymore. Like, that's me. I still overachieve in gym class. But I'm not trying to like, I think I've had glimmers and like touched that reality that I am worthy unconditionally. But it's also because I've had to unpack all of that and dismantle that in my brain, and it's taken a lot of therapy, neuro-linguistic programming coaching, and also many failed attempts at diets to be like, oh, okay, that what is that really doing? I think intention, like being really clear on your intention of why you're doing something, actually transforms that experience. And if it's like, I want to do that because I think people will like me more, that never works out. Look at me in a crop top. I look like a troll. Did not know. There is a thing called inner and outer beauty, And I talk about that in the TEDx talk, where I was just like, okay, I'm trying not to be attached to people's judgment, but I do look like a troll right now.
What you're making me think about, I know we're going to be coming to the end of the time, so I'm just going to touch on this very briefly. But when you went to Harvard and you joined a cult,
oh yeah,
you didn't know that you joined a cult.
And the idea, low SAT score. I brought down the average, people.
But the idea of like, who are your friends and who are you pleasing and how are you pleasing them? And that's so hard. We are so vulnerable in those moments. I think especially as women too. I mean, it's just the idea of, what do we need to do to be of value, as you were saying? So
yeah. And throw in like a hot cult leader too. And I was like, I know we have to be celibate, but I just want to have some babies with you, It's
just amazing what we will talk ourselves into as human beings. And but it's, I love what you're saying about reframing your relationship with your body. I mean, true forgiveness.
Yeah. It's not what my body is not. It is more what is my body. Like, what is it? What is the gift that it brings?
Yeah.
And sometimes we need those life-altering moments to make us wake up to that.
Yeah.
I think going back to the cult, there is so much around wishing to belong in our own families, to be understood, to be recognized, to be celebrated. Can we ask for that during Thanksgiving? We have this desire to belong in our own families, in our communities, and in our own bodies. That desire is so deep. And unfortunately, no one else can give us that. But if we're careful with our language on how we affirm and support other people with their journeys, with their bodies, it really makes a difference. Because that one stinging comment when I was 12, if you get too fat, no one will ever love you and you'll die alone. It's so hard to unremember that. And so we have to be so careful with the words that we tell our young people and to tell ourselves, because for so long, I took on the responsibility of my father and my aunts, and I had their voices in my brain, and I was doing their work for them, beating myself up over and over again over the years. What is so wrong with me? Why am I so lazy? Why am I so worthless? Prove my worth through achievement. And then that becomes a blind quest with no end, right? So to have the clarity of understanding why do we feel this way? What is it that is going to give us belonging? What is it that we truly want? And to have the courage to go pursue that, even if that's a one-woman show with a terrible title. Like in activating this courage, we will learn something new. We will learn something new even if we fail. Even if there's only 7 people in a show. I did have a sketch comedy show that had 7 people and there was 7 cast members. You know what I mean? Like, it was sad. But there is something that we activate when we express that courage. We will learn something new. It'll give us new information to keep pivoting, to keep inching to what we think will give us our self-actualization, to give us that peace, that give us that fulfillment. It is possible, but it does not happen unless we take an inch, a pivot, a 1-degree turn towards that courage and that trying. So what is it that you need for your own belonging? And how do you do that? How are you going to do that today?
I don't even know what else to say after that. That was absolutely gorgeous. There is so much in your book that just rings it so deeply for me with family, immigrants. I mean, my parents are immigrants, nowhere near to the story of which your family went through, but just the idea of the role that family plays in your life and who we are, how we identify with how we show up every day, and the food that we eat every day. I mean, that's one of the other things that we haven't even really touched on, but food is such a shared thing and such a cultural identity piece as well. So as we talk about the different identities in life through ourselves and through our family members, through our cultural norms and connections, I'm so grateful that you are doing this work, that you are creating literally that archive, that you are putting it into place to be able to make sure that people learn from it and that they are able to in turn activate their courage. So Susan, thank you so much for such a beautiful conversation.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
No. Any final thoughts that you would like to share?
Yeah. If you want to keep in touch with me, go to my website, susanlieu.me. I have a Substack called Live Like You're Mortal that drops every week. I have a podcast called Model Minority Moms about being everything for everyone else but yourself and the struggle that is that. And I'm on Instagram at Susan Lieu. Please buy my book. You can listen to the audiobook and read it. Give me 5 stars. It's really important to spread awareness, and that can be done through reviews and buying the book. So if you love my work, please support it. Please give it out as gifts, because I can only keep doing this if folks believe in it. So thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that too, because a lot of people just passively consume, the stuff online, which is great, but you don't know. You don't know that it's resonating. And exactly as you said, you need that broader support to make sure that there's that larger cascade of all of the amazing things that you do.
Thank you.
Yes. And we will make sure that everything is in the show notes. So again, Susan, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Stay courageous. The Courage Effect is brought to you by Weller Collaboration. If you're looking for a leadership coach, maybe a speaker or a consultant to help you or your team be more courageous and adaptable, we would love to have a conversation. More information is available via the links in our show notes. Please spread the word about the Courage Effect. You taking a few minutes to rate or review your favorite episodes or share them with people in your universe makes a big difference. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. For more information about the show, me, our amazing guests, or you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, please contact us via our website at thecourageeffect.com. It takes a village to bring this show to you. I want to thank Alex Sandyforth for her production and administrative superpowers, Dave Nelson for composing our theme music, and I am your host, Suzanne Weller. Thank you again for listening.